Hi, and welcome back. In the last video, we introduced the for loop, and we talked briefly about a function called range. This range function allows us a shortcut to create a sequence of numbers, and we use it with a for loop when we just want to do the body of the for loop some number of times. So if you recall a statement like this, range 4, if we put that inside a for loop, it would cause the for loop to loop 4 times, because this range function produces the sequence of numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? But in reality, range can produce any sort of sequence of numbers where there's a starting point and a stopping point. And so in fact there are 3 parameters to the range function. It doesn't always have to start with 0. We can have our sequence of numbers start with any number. So we can give range both a start position and a stop value. So for example, if we want to do something like this, range, where we'll start with the number 1 and use 5 as our stopping value, we see that this produces the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, why doesn't it produce the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Well, the way that you always want to think about the stopping value is that we're going to create the sequence of numbers starting with the starting number and continuing as long as we are less than the stopping value. So the final value in our sequence of numbers will be, in this case, just 1 less than the stop value. And so that gives us the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can add a third parameter, and we might call that third parameter the step value. And we'll see that the step value lets us count by more than simply 1. So if we want to count by 2's, for example, we could use a 2 as our step value. So you'll see here, we've got this little example set up. We've got range starting at 0 to 19, counting by 2. Starting by 0 to less than 20, again counting by 2. Now before I press the run button, you might want to ask yourself, how will these 2 sequences of numbers be different? Or will they? And the answer is that they won't be different, right? Because we're going to continue to add numbers to our sequence as long as those numbers are less than our stopping value. So in this case, the number 18 is the highest value, counting by 2, that's less than both 19 and less than 20. All right, finally, the last little trick that you might want to know about the range function is that it doesn't have to go in increasing order. We can actually create a range that starts at a big number and goes to a littler number, and we tell it to count downwards by using a negative step value. So in this case, now we've created the countdown 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because we've used negative 1 as the step value. And the way that you want to think about this going downward is the same as upward. We're going to continue down as long as, in this case, we are greater than the stop value of 0. So this will be the smallest integer that's greater than the stopping value. And like the increasing, we can use just about any number. So in this case, we can count negatives by 5. So starting at 100, going down by 5's. Okay, so to round out this video, let's just look at one last example where we're using a for loop again, along with this more interesting advanced range function. So we'll start a for loop for I in range, and we'll start at 100. We will go to 0 and count by negative 5s, and all we're going to do is print I, and now we'll give it a run, and you'll see that I takes on the value of that range starting with 100 and going down to 5. So that's the advanced range function. You will find that very useful in a couple of the exercises that we have for you here at the end of this chapter.